What's up, Raider Nation? Silver and Black Attack coming at you again with another video. And today we got our good friend and special guest, Mr. Sam, on the podcast again. Say what's up, Sam.
How are we doing, everybody? Glad to be back.
Yep, glad to have Sam back. And today we're going to go over the AFC predictions in the American Football Conference to see who is going to make it through the playoffs and to the Super Bowl out of the AFC.
All right, so starting off hot, we'll start off with the AFC. So we got the Buffalo Bills, even though they lost Stephon Diggs, we got them winning the division. Then behind them, we got the Miami Dolphins, who were a wild card team last year, led by Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel, sorry. Third, we got the New York Jets, who I think would have done some stuff last year had Aaron Rodgers not got hurt. He's going to be back healthy this season. And then coming up the rear, we have New England Patriots, who, they drafted Drake May, who's a good young quarterback, but the coaching staff's not in place, the roster's not in place. So those are our rankings for the AFC.
Let's talk about Buffalo first. It's easy to look at the key losses in Buffalo. You look at Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Matt Milano's out for a good portion of the season. But when you have Josh Allen, it really doesn't seem to matter that much. It seems like they can do basically anything. Plus, when you look at their offense, especially in the back half of the season, the middle of the season, the Bills went on a slump, even losing to the Patriots. We were talking about what the hell is going on with the Bills. They're just throwing it nonstop. And that's when they started to work in their run game a little more, really started to get James Cook involved in the offense. And that just completely changed their game, made them a lot better. We saw what they did to the Steelers in the wild card game last year. Like, they absolutely ran up the score on them. So, yes, you lose Diggs. Yes, you lose Gabe Davis. But who do you get? You get Keon Coleman to replace Stephon Diggs. You get Mac Hollins to replace Gabe Davis. You bring in Curtis Samuel to be a dynamic piece. You still got Khalil Shakir there. You still got Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. I really don't think that offense is going to skip a beat. And when you look at the defense, you lose Trey White as well, but you still have one of the most dynamic slot corners in the game. You got Teron Johnson. You still got a bunch of depth that was really able to help last year when they had their injuries and a bunch of people off the field. So I don't really see the Bills skipping much of a beat. Miami is an interesting team because they are probably one of, if not the most talented team in the NFL. They are fast as hell. I mean, you look at the offense, just all the fast guys they got. They got Mostert, they got Achane, they got Wright, the new guy they drafted. They got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Freakishly good talent. They also signed Jordan Poyer from Buffalo. They made a lot of other moves. Their team is old, though. They are the oldest team in the NFL, and they got a lot of players coming off key injuries. Like, for example, you got Jalen Phillips coming off the torn Achilles. Bradley Chubb was injured last year. You got him coming back too. Plus, with the old age, and as we've seen, their declines at the end of the season, it's a little tough to gauge out Miami. Like, they could be very explosive at the beginning of the season, like we've seen the past two seasons, and then fall off, and then nobody would be surprised. Jets are an interesting team. Obviously, you got Aaron Rodgers coming back from injury. You got Mike Williams coming back from injury. You have probably one of the most elite defenses in the game. But similar to Miami, they have a lot of top tier talent. I'm not entirely sure how the middles falls out. I think they learned from their mistakes from last season, not getting a backup quarterback and not fixing up the offensive line. So what do? They sign Tyrod Taylor. They draft Olu Fashanu. They really made sure to fix those parts that completely derailed them last season. You still have a quarterback in his 40s coming off an Achilles tear, which it's Aaron Rodgers. I know you never 100% know how it's going to play out. Now we get to the Patriots. And the Patriots, I don't want to say they're a mess because I feel like they're heading in the right direction, but they are what we know they are. And that is a team that is deep in a rebuild. It was announced today that Drake May isn't even going to be the starter for the beginning of the season. It's going to be Jacoby Brissett. And I think the defense is very underrated and very good. Besides losing Judon, didn't really lose anyone else. but the offense, and especially the offensive line, really leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, and I think that's a great analysis of the AFC East. So, we're just going to keep on going right here as we got three more divisions to fill out. In the AFC North, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, taking up that top seed in the entire AFC, as you'll see here in a second, with the Baltimore Ravens closely following them and getting the fifth spot in the wild card. And after that, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers coming in at the 3 seed with Russell Wilson at the quarterback. We think they're going to regress a little bit this year with Arthur Smith at OC, as Sam you'll get into in a bit. And then wrapping up that very competitive division, I think we're going to have the Browns at 4, but not by a lot, maybe by a game or two coming in behind the Steelers.
Yeah, this is easily the most competitive division in the AFC. I mean, last year the Bengals got fourth in the division and they finished 8-9. And yes, last season was by all means a pretty disastrous season for them. Like most things that could have gone wrong did wrong. But I'm not entirely sure if I would put them at the number 1. This really feels like their last chance to get everything done. Like you got T. Higgins leaving next year. You got Jamar Chase on a contract year and he's holding out right now. We'll see how it plays out. I think they make the playoffs, but I don't know if they'll be as good as a team like Baltimore, who, yes, they lost 2 running backs, but they got Derrick Henry. They drafted Wiggins in the first round, who's looking like a very good corner. That team is just so good and so dynamic. Zay Flowers is crazy good. I really like Rashad Bateman. There's a lot of stuff that they can do. And I think Baltimore is going to win the division, kind of take away with it. Pittsburgh, I don't see that as much. I think with Arthur Smith, you're going to see a lot of weird shit. And I don't think it ultimately comes down to Russell Wilson. I think it more comes down to what Arthur Smith is going to do, like having Calvin Austin throw passes to Connor Hayward, because that's just the stuff that Arthur Smith does. The defense is still spectacular, but I really don't know how that offense is going to look. And in preseason, hasn't looked great so far. Then we get to the Browns, who I think have the best corner trio we've seen in the past 5 years since like Stephon Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, and Jonathan Jones in New England. Denzel Ward, spectacular. Greg Newsome, spectacular. Martin Emerson, spectacular. The concerns for me are quarterback and running back. Like you got Nick Chubb coming off a gruesome injury, and you really have no clue how Deshaun Watson's going to play.
Yeah, what I'll say about the AFC North is that, I think we both have Cincy and the Ravens making the playoffs, but the reason why I would say I have Cincy a notch ahead of the Ravens is that the Ravens lost Mike McDonald to the Seattle Seahawks, and they called him Boy Genius in Baltimore last year. And so they have the good personnel on defense. I like what they have at all 3 levels of their defense. But what I'll say is I don't really trust Lamar Jackson in some of those bigger games. Last year he had an MVP type season, but he's not shown that he's able to repeat that success year after year. So I think he's due for a step back this season. And Joe Burrow, he was injured last year. I think if you were to compare those 2 quarterbacks, I think Joe Burrow, in my eyes, is a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson. And I think Jamar Chase, there's a question mark there, but I don't think he's going to miss out on game checks. So I think he's going to be back for the start of the regular season. And I think they're going to be good. And so we have them, I believe, as a number 2 seed. So Cincy a notch ahead of the Ravens, but I still think the Ravens are going to make it as the 5 seed. So moving on to the AFC South, we got the Texans winning the division with their young star quarterback in CJ Stroud, with their star head coach in DeMeco Ryans. They're only going to take steps forward now that they added Stephon Diggs. And then second in the division, we got the Colts with a really good head coach in Shane Steichen, who almost led Gardner Minshew to the playoffs last season. I think he's doing a good job there in Indy. And then at 3, we have Jacksonville, who they have Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. I would say the roster's a notch below the Texans and the Colts, but Trevor didn't show a lot last season. He regressed. Everyone thought he was going to take that next step and be a top 5 quarterback, but he just didn't do that. And the Titans, there's a lot of question marks there. They fired a good head coach in Mike Vrabel. I would say Will Levis showed a little bit last year, but he's not a proven commodity at the quarterback position. So that's how we got the AFC South stacking up.
Yeah. All right. Houston, there is not a single position where I look at Houston and don't think to myself, their team got better in that position. Their biggest loss was Jonathan Greener, and it didn't even matter because they signed Danielle Hunter. They got Stephon Diggs. They got Joe Mixon. They are just a ridiculous team, and there's so many expectations there. But if there's any young quarterback in the league who can handle it, it's CJ Stroud. Colts are a ridiculously underrated team, and especially their linebackers. You look at Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, they are both really, really good linebackers. And since they play Mike, they just kind of get overlooked. But the team's very good. You get Jonathan Taylor back fully healthy. Yes, you lose Zach Moss, but if you got Jonathan Taylor, doesn't matter that much. You draft A.D. Mitchell to be with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman, and you get back a healthy Anthony Richardson. That brings a whole new element to the offense. Jacksonville is a very interesting team to me because a lot of people point to Jacksonville barely missing on the playoffs last season and say, oh, it's because Trevor regressed. And I don't fully agree with that because we got to remember at one point, Jacksonville was 8-4. And just before that, Christian Kirk got injured. And then there was the Monday night game against Baltimore, and Trevor Lawrence sprained his ankle. Got hit pretty bad, sprained his ankle, and decided to play the next few games, and they lost every single one of those games. So I don't really see it as a regression from Trevor. I see it more as this guy sprained his ankle and lost his top wide receiver. And for any quarterback, no matter how good you are, unless you're Mahomes, that's incredibly difficult to try and win with. I still think they have a very solid team. I think Doug Peterson's a very good coach. I think they're going to do better than people are expecting them to. Tennessee is a better team than people are giving them credit for because they were very aggressive in the offseason, trying to make moves for players because they got a quarterback on their second year and they want to buy it now. They got Calvin Ridley. They got L'Jarius Sneed. They still have Jeffrey Simmons, got Harold Landry coming back. I think Tennessee is I wouldn't say a great team. I think they're a very solid team. I still don't understand firing Vrabel, but if Callahan was the mastermind behind Cincinnati, could work out for them.
Yeah, and that's a great analysis of that division. As you know, there's a couple teams at the top, Houston and Indianapolis, who are going to be, competing for that one seed who's going to get that division win and hopefully avoid a wild card game here. But as we move on now to the all important AFC West, of course, Silver and Black Attack, where our heart lies. Well, Jahan and I's heart lies. Sam already went through it with his New England Patriots in the AFC East. But okay, we got Kansas City going number one. Okay, we got them number one. They're gonna win at least 12 to 13 games this year. That's pretty much given. Number 2, 3, and 4 is where it gets a little interesting. I think the Chargers and the Broncos are very close, and that's why we're going to put them at number 3 and number 4, respectively, being the Raider channel that we are. We got the Raiders, as we expected us to win 8 to 9 games this year, that being enough to be the number 2 seed in the division, and then followed by the Chargers and Broncos closely, who will respectively, we think, win around 7 to 8 games each.
Yeah, I think with the Raiders, we are a Raider channel, so it's hard not to be biased. But what I will say is we had atrocious quarterback play last year. When you combine the performances of Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell, it was subpar quarterback play, and we were still able to win 8 games. So you're hoping, if you're Telesco and Antonio Pierce there, you're hoping Minshew can at least be serviceable. He can be a serviceable bridge quarterback. And if we just have decent quarterback play, I think we can get to 9 wins. Now, I don't think that's going to be good enough to qualify for a wild card spot in the AFC because it's a really competitive conference with all these superstar quarterbacks, which we don't have. So I think our roster is really good, but I think the quarterback play, we can be decent with it. I just don't think it's going to be good enough to get us into the playoffs. So I think 9-8 is a good estimation for where we're going to be. And then with the Chargers, I like their quarterback, I like their head coach, but the rest of their roster is pretty depleted, I would say. They got 2 good edge rushers, but the rest of their roster with their linebackers and secondary, I would say is not as good. And the receiving core is pretty depleted as well with the departures of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And then with Denver, I think it's the same way. I like Sean Payton. Bo Nix has played pretty well in preseason, but they just don't have as good of a roster as KC and the Raiders do in that division. And with Bo Nix being a rookie, it's hard for me to see them being a playoff team. So I think they're going to be the fourth team in the division. And so that'll lead us into our playoff standings. And we're going to show that on the screen here. We got the number one seed being Kansas City at 13-4. They're coming off another Super Bowl. I think it's pretty logical to say that they're the top dog in the AFC. And then number two, we're going to have Cincinnati. You know, Cincy is a team, they're the only team that's been able to beat KC in the playoffs. So I think at this point, they're a logical number two seed with Joe Burrow being healthy this season. Number three, we got Buffalo. You know, obviously they're losing Stephon Diggs. They've lost a few defensive players as well, but they have Josh Allen, who's a bona fide superstar quarterback. He's the third best quarterback in the conference. And, you know, I like Sean McDermott. A lot of people give him a bad rap, but he's been nothing but successful in his tenure in Buffalo. So until they're unseeded, I have a hard time believing they're not going to win that division. And then number four, we got Houston. I think CJ Stroud's going to develop again, take that next step, and really become a top five quarterback this season. So when you look at the wild cards, again, Baltimore's going to make it at 11-6 as the 5 seed. Number 6, we got Miami at 10-7. You know, Tua, I think early in the season he performs well, but late in the season he's not a good cold weather quarterback. And so they tend to lose games down the stretch of the season, which is going to really prohibit them from winning that division. And then number 7, Indy is going to go 9-8. As I mentioned before, Shane Steichen is a really good young offensive mind. And so with him almost leading Gardner Minshew to the playoffs last season, with Anthony Richardson, who was the number 4 overall pick a few years ago, you know, he's unproven, but he's got a rocket arm. He can run. He's an athletic specimen at that quarterback position. So I think he's going to work wonders in that offense. I think they're going to be the number 7 seed.
Yeah, overall, that's who we got making it in the AFC playoff picture. So that means that the Ravens would go to Houston, the Dolphins would go to Buffalo, and the Indianapolis Colts would go to Cincinnati, as you see right here, with the Chiefs getting the first round bye. And Raider Nation, you know, we know this was not specifically on the Raiders today, but we think we had to get this out to you. And we want to thank Sam for being our guest today and coming on and providing some deep analysis about, you know, who's going to make it out of the AFC. So Sam, thank you so much again for coming on, and we'd love to have you back again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and hopefully we get a Raiders and Patriots playoff game one of these years, you know, maybe in the next decade, but you know, one of
Sure
these
you want that again?
Yeah, we're out for some vengeance. So we're out for some vengeance for sure. But Raider Nation, we got the NFC prediction video coming up soon here in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. And then after, we'll get to a Super Bowl prediction, you know, a way too early Super Bowl prediction to try to see, you know, who it's going to be down in New Orleans in 2025. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. We really appreciate it. John and I, you know, we've grown this channel from the ground up. We're very close to that monetization number of 1,000. So please hit that subscribe button, whether you disagree with us or agree with us, love us or hate us. We'll always love you. So Raider Nation, we'll see you in the next video.